Greetings to you, saints, once again. I count it a privilege, I count it an honor to connect with you via this platform on this day number 3 of our prayer week in this month of May. And we are continuing on the area of grace. We are continuing in the area of grace as an extension of the teaching series we're doing every Sunday titled The Different Shades of Grace. And on Monday, day number 1, we're focusing on growth in grace, the importance of us growing or making steady progress in the grace of God. And then yesterday, day number 2, our focus was on being established, being built on grace for the sole purpose of finding stability and strength in the grace of God. And today we're moving on to consistency in grace. Consistency in grace. Now, by way of definition, consistency, it simply means, or it speaks of a quality of always behaving in the same way. It's a quality of always having the same opinion or having the same standard. Now, taking that understanding to the area of grace, which is our focus area. Now, I want you to understand as a child of God that obtaining God's grace is one thing, and keeping it or maintaining it or continuing in it is another. Yes, obtaining grace is one thing, but continuing is another thing. Now, if the devil cannot stop you from obtaining God's grace, he's going to channel all his effort to stop you from continuing in that grace. And that's why it's important today for us to take time to pray and also to reflect and make wise decisions that can help you and I to be consistent in our walk in the grace of God. Galatians chapter number 5, verse number 4. Galatians chapter number 5, verse number 4. Now, the book of Galatians is so relevant when we talk about consistency because we find Paul bringing an exhortation, and in a way he was also bringing a rebuke, but in a loving way, to the believers in the region of Galatia, because they had started so well in the Spirit. They had started well in the grace of God. They had started well in the favor of God. But along the way, they moved away from that grace and they went back to the law. So here and there, Paul would speak to them and says, "Oh, you foolish Galatians, we has bewitched you. You started well in the Spirit, but how come now you're trying to finish your race in the flesh or in the law?" But when you come to Galatians chapter number 5, verse number 4, this is what he says. He says, "If you seek to be justified and to be declared righteous and to be given a right standing with God through the law, if you're going to find yourself seeking favor with God on the basis of the law or on the system of your own efforts," this is what Paul is saying. He's saying you are brought to nothing and so separated from Christ. In other words, he's saying you have fallen away from grace. You have fallen away from God's gracious favor and unmerited blessings. So we find the church here, they started well, but they are struggling to continue in the grace of God. And Paul is saying, if you are now seeking the favor of God on the basis of what you do, that is what he calls falling away from the grace of God. So it's important that for you and I, we keep an eye. We also take time to pray. We make wise decisions that will enable you and I to be consistent, to continue, to always behave in the same way, to uphold the same standard, the same mindset of God's grace upon our lives. The Bible is filled with countless examples of men and women who were consistent in their walk or were consistent in the grace of God. A classical example is Enoch. Genesis chapter number 5, verse number 24, it says, "And Enoch walked with God, and he was no more." That is consistency there. When you look at Apostle Paul, the man was consistent in the message of God's grace. The best of all examples is Jesus Christ himself. He was consistent in all his ways. He was consistent. In other words, he was upholding the same way of doing things. Now, when you talk of consistency, consistency is a call to be disciplined. Consistency is a call to be disciplined. I once said in another place that you cannot get better at what you are not working at. You cannot get better at what you are not working at. And within the context of the grace of God, allow me to say, you can never perfect a walk in grace if you are not walking consistently in the walk of grace. You can never perfect your walk in grace if you are not walking in the same walk of grace consistently. So it's important that, we develop a mindset of being consistent, a mindset of being consistent in the message and in the walk of grace in everything that we do. So as we take time today to pray, also take time to reflect, not only in this particular area, but also consider the principle around consistency. Look at the areas of your life where you are falling short when it comes to consistency. It can be in your prayer life. It could be maybe in your relationship. It could be maybe in your approach to your work or to your business. You don't have consistency. One time you are here, the next time you are there, the next month you are there. There is need for consistency in everything that we do in life if we are going to achieve or going to attain the results that we desire. So I want to encourage you, child of the living God. Remember, we are looking at grace as a system at this stage. It's important that we continue. It's important that we behave in the same way. It's important that we uphold the same system of grace in everything that we do. Let grace prevail in your work area. Let grace prevail in your business. Let grace prevail in your family, in your relationships. Let grace prevail in your studies. All around, let it be about grace. Since we are established by grace, since we're established in grace, it's important that we continue in the very same grace. So may God bless you. May God keep you today as we continue to pray and also to reflect consistency in grace. God bless you. This is Pastor Danny.